Right. Well, welcome to our special episode of Candid Conversations on Leadership. We're live here at the University of Illinois IT Pro Forum.
Oh my goodness.
And Candice, you're looking really fancy today. Why are you all dressed up?
Thank you. Thank you for noticing, Chris. So today I gave the keynote speech at IT Pro Forum, and it was titled "To Shine Bright and Avoid Burnout." So I got a little sparkly for you and for everyone here.
Fantastic.
1 second.
Yeah.
So I saw you in the audience, and did you have any feedback or did you have any takeaways from my keynote?
Yeah, I think the takeaway was this idea of setting boundaries, and that's a way that we can prevent ourselves from getting burnout. And I'll tell you, for a lot of us, this past week has been pretty difficult. And one of the things that we really need to do in our lives when there's a lot of stuff going on around us that we don't have control over, it's setting boundaries. So how have you been kind of setting your boundaries this last week?
Definitely taking some time for myself and making sure to give myself space that I needed was important. But also, in addition to setting boundaries, having a community around me, a caring community, people that I could reach out to if I felt that I needed more help, that was very important for me as well. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right in. We're going to do an Ask Us Anything format for this episode. We're not going to have a particular topic. We have a bunch of questions that people provided us to begin with.
I know.
So we're going to try a few of those. We have 2 full pages of questions, which is kind of crazy. Thank you all for providing those. So we're going to jump right into those questions and start answering them. But what we really want everyone in the audience to do is feel free. We will give a pause in between each question. If you want to come up to the microphone here and ask a question, that would be fantastic. We'd love to hear you live ask your question. So let's go ahead and get started. Candice, do you have one to start with?
I do. I have a question to start with. So the question is, as the saying goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. How do you determine when to take point and go fast and when to make space for time for a more collaborative approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here at the University of Illinois, collaboration is sort of the middle name, right? And another word for collaboration, I think we tend to form committees, and that's how we collaborate together. And as you all know, as you all can probably realize, committees kind of slow things down. We don't necessarily go as fast as we can. So how do we get to this place where we actually can make some decisions and move forward with things? Candice, do you have any particular ways that you kind of help be more decisive in this environment where we're really collaborative all the time?
I mean, when I'm thinking about when I want to go fast or when I want to go slow, I actually take a step back. I have categories. So if there's like urgency or there's deadlines, sometimes it's going to be easier for me to get some things done myself. However, if there are complexity to the project and I need like expertise and the expertise is not me, that's when I usually have to reach out and do that collaborative approach or find some expert to run point. But if there are multiple stakeholders involved, like too many people, I never can go it alone. I have to form a committee and a task force and hold a couple of different groups. That's one of the opportunities. So if I see multiple stakeholders, definitely go on a collaborative approach. Also, if there's a learning development that can be had, so someone else can learn something, a skill by that, making it a collaborative approach are things that I go. How about you?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the idea of stakeholders. You have to really identify your stakeholders before you go forward. And if it's something that has a wide number of stakeholders or some really important stakeholders, that's the time when you really need to bring people together and collaborate. Whereas if you're just trying to kind of innovate on the side or throw ideas against the wall, that's when you want to maybe do it yourself or have a really small group together that can sort of figure out, will this even work before we bring it to the larger group to see if it's something that'll work in a more broad way?
Yeah, I think we knocked question 1 out of the water. Check. Okay.
All right, question number 2. How can leaders identify and address groupthink, not only within their teams, but also in the directives and strategies set by their own leaders to ensure a culture of diverse perspectives and innovative thinking? So how do we get out of groupthink?
So, you know how some people talk about playing devil's advocate?
Yeah.
I usually, instead of thinking about that, I think about there's a challenging the status quo game that I usually play with some of my nonprofit groups. And so there's, you list several facts about a thing. So let's say, what are the facts about shoes? Like, what's a fact about a shoe?
It has a soul.
It has a soul. Another fact about a shoe.
Some of them have laces.
Laces. Keep going. Anything else you know about shoes?
There's a heel to them.
There's a heel.
There's a toe to them.
Yep.
You put them on your feet.
Right. And so you list out all the things that you know are specific. And then I tell people to think about the opposite. So what if you didn't have to wear them on your feet? What if you didn't have, and so they're thinking about the opposite areas. And then I tell them to challenge, like, so what if that was true? How can you make that true? Like, and it can be crazy, but instead of thinking about shoes, you think about an actual problem at work. So it's a problem with higher education or a problem with technology. And then you think about the flip side and then ask those questions about, okay, you know, so what if college was free? Or, you know, whatever those questions are. So it costs money now, it doesn't cost money. How we get there, who's involved. And even if you don't have the most diverse team, it'll allow them to think in a more innovative manner. So that's an example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important for us as leaders to notice when that groupthink is happening, because a lot of times we can say something, and if we as the leader or the manager of the group say something right off the bat, there might be a reluctance of the people to disagree with you as a leader. And if you're seeing that, you need to pull those things out yourself. In a previous team that I had, there you could tell that people wanted to say something at the table, but they weren't saying it. And I would almost know the question that they were going to ask, and they didn't want to ask it because they either didn't want to seem unknowledgeable about something, or they were a little worried about the hierarchical structure. And so I would actually ask the question for them. I would kind of anticipate what they were going to do and play devil's advocate to myself in that role. And so I think it's really important for us to recognize that and make sure it doesn't happen, because we are really bad leaders when all we're doing is getting reflection of our own opinions back at us.
Mm-hmm. And there's also, aside from open dialogue, being able to be intentional about getting outside voices. So if you do see that you have that, how can you get that outside of your team, whether it be on other people on campus or other things? So how can you do that?
Yeah, that's honestly the reason that I value diversity so much on our teams and in our campus community here, is because they bring that difference in lived experience to the table, and they see things through a different lens that helps us come to better solutions.
What's one piece of advice that you wish you'd received early in your career? You might have to think a long time. Early in your career.
Whoa. Now, you've given me a little bit of age-related jokes in the past, but that one had a little bit of a sharp edge on it. But it's okay. It's okay. We're friends. So yes, I have been here a while. Since 1993, I've been here on this campus. And I think the one thing that I wish someone had told me and I had listened to them, maybe somebody did tell me and I didn't listen, it is this idea that it's not about me. And we've talked about this on the podcast before. When I was on the keynote for this event last year, I talked about this, but I want to repeat that, because my career has been so much more satisfying since I flipped this notion of it's about me and my advancement. Once I got to this place where I was like, it's about my team, it's about the community, it's about lifting everybody else up. That's what makes it incredibly satisfying as a leader. It doesn't need to be about me anymore. And so I wish someone had sort of beat me over the head with that early in my career. How about you?
Thanks, Chris. Now you got me all emotional, which is a good thing. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think for me, a piece of advice, you don't want to, and you don't have to be everything to everyone. So people pleasing is something that I struggled with early on, just wanting to be everyone's friend. And when you're in a work environment, you are not going to get along with everyone, and everyone does not need to be your friend. I'm not saying that you need to be mean or hard to the individuals, but sometimes you're just a work colleague is just a work colleague. And that was unfortunate I didn't learn that early on. I was just like, oh, this person doesn't like me. What can I do? You do not have to do that. You don't have to bend over backwards. Just do the good work and keep moving.
Yeah, you can work respectfully with each other, even if you don't really get along. I mean, I don't have real social relationships with really anybody on my team. I'll go out every once in a while, we'll do things as a team together, but it actually makes things a little bit easier at work to not have those close personal connections outside of work. I love knowing about the people on my team and caring about them, but when you walk over that line and they become like personal confidants and friends and everything, it can cause a lot of issues at work, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. So the best thing that I can say is that you can have those conversations and work with people and you can feel like there's friendly banter, but then you don't have to worry about what's happening on the weekends and all those other things.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people talk about family at work. They describe their teams as family. I don't like that. I actually think that it's not family, it's not friends, it's a community, it's a team, and it has its value in itself, but it doesn't have all of the implications that when you say friends and family. So
I will say that there are some familiar aspects at work that can be beneficial because you have some shared experiences. But yes, there's definitely a different relationship at work than at home.
Yeah. Thanks.
We have a question, everyone. Let's give a round of applause.
So, my name is Leon Wilson, and my question is pertaining to what you just said. I'm a father of 3 little kids, and right now I'm motivated by money and investing in my career. And you said that you took a step back and lifted from yourself to everybody else. I find that so hard to be, especially watching Candice. I used to work under her as a student. I see her elevate. I want more. How do I get more and get out of that mindset of this race? How do I flip that? I just can't see that right now.
So I'll answer that in 2 pieces. I'm sure Candice has some input there too. One is I understand that I sit here in a really privileged position to be able to say that, right? To be able to say it's not about me anymore because I've gotten to where I want to be, right? And I probably was really close to where I am now before that thing actually switched in me. So I say it from a privileged position. The other piece I think is, I think there's maybe a false dichotomy that you're thinking about, that making it about everybody else doesn't advance you. And I think making it about everybody else actually has a better chance of advancing you, because you will build better teams, you will create better products, you will serve our clients and customers better if you uplift everybody around you, and people will see that and recognize it, and it will be good for you as well.
Yeah, if I wanted to add on to how to make it about, it's the idea of servant leadership. You're familiar with that model, but it's more than that sometimes, because I find it's very rewarding to see the growth of other people. So like when I saw you earlier today during the keynote, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember when you were undergrad. I remember all of those things. And now I'm like, look at you doing all of the things. And so that for me allows me to see what this can do. How can this grow? How can you help other people? And so that is rewarding in terms of, even if I was not at a title of leadership, I'm still role modeling that for other people. And so even if I didn't have the title to accomplish with the other things that I'm doing, I'm still showing that I can demonstrate that leadership. So
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your question. All right, so Candice, can you share a pivotal moment in your career when you knew you wanted to make a difference in higher education?
A pivotal moment in my career when I knew I wanted to make a difference in higher education. So I'll go ahead and share an example. I was a judge on, you know how you have those student groups, Gies College of Business, they have a lot of student groups, engineering, they have group projects, and they present a topic. I was judging one of those competitions. I don't remember the year. I can't think back that long. And several of the students that were doing the competition, I gave feedback on, and the feedback that I used, they went ahead and started a business and a product, and now that's like their main source of income.
That's amazing.
And so seeing the student success based on feedback that was given for a student project that then became their livelihood I was like, wow, they're bettering the world. They're doing all those things. Not that my feedback gave that, but I saw how the students here at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign can do things and empower and innovate outside of our community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many examples of the power of the work that we do. When I started my career in Illinois Extension, which is the outreach arm of University of Illinois, and I was building websites. And I remember there was, we got an email in from a young mother, a new mother, who read our webpage on how to soothe a crying baby. And she said he saved her life. Maybe a little bit of hyperbole, but it was like, whoa, we're actually making a difference. And then if I think about I sort of fast forward in my career, and I realize that what we are doing here is making the world smarter, right? Think about that. We're making the world smarter, more intelligent, making better decisions, and generally more open-minded. Like that is a higher purpose. And so that to me is why I get up in the morning, so that we are creating students, we're putting students out there in the world that have a better outlook on the world, and they can make a difference. And then the research that we do, there's just so much that happens at a university. I'm actually of the opinion that so many of the issues that we're seeing in our society right now are going to be solved at universities.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and ask the next question.
Sure.
Can you provide an example of a tough decision that didn't turn out as expected and what you learned from it?
That's a great question.
Oh, we're thinking.
It's like one of those questions you get in an interview. It's like, where did you fail? So I'm trying not to fake. I'm trying not to fake fail here and answer it in a way that makes me look better. I think it is not having not seen down the road far enough with our team and realizing we needed to add capacity in certain places. And that ended up making like several people on the team have to work in ways that were like way above and beyond what they should have had to work. And it was my lack of foresight, my lack of making a decision to say, I need to go and ask college leadership for more capacity. That's what it was. That's where I feel like I made the decision not to act. And in many ways, not acting is as much of a decision as making a decision actually doing something about it. How about you?
Tough decision. So I make small decisions all the time, but a tough decision. I think one of the tough decisions that I had to make that didn't turn out as expected is I was giving feedback to someone that they weren't going to be continuing on with us anymore. So kind of like a T contract, like, oh, thank you for your service. And we already had expectation meetings we worked on. However, I took it kind of personally because it wasn't someone that I recruited, but when we had these expectation meetings, I really thought it was going to go for the better. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Yeah. It's going to work out, but did have to let the person go as it was there. And I learned so much from that experience because letting the person go, working with them, regardless of how it went, is that there were areas where I can improve in my communication skills. There were areas where I could improve in how we set expectations. There were lots of preparation I could have done when the person was onboarded to new things. I just felt that there was so much extra that could have happened. I could have partnered them with other people so they can learn and do other things. And so I learned a lot. The decision, I guess it wasn't really tough. It had to happen because it was going to affect the team if it didn't. But I think I learned a lot from that early on. I think
that actually just reminded me of maybe what I should have answered that question with. And that was the biggest decisions we make as leaders and managers on our teams is who we hire. Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about that.
It's a huge investment. When we're making that decision on, maybe spending 45 minutes with the person, maybe spending an hour and a half with the person, having 2 or 3 pages of written material about that person, maybe a few recommendations from people that, how many of you have ever had a bad recommendation from somebody who's on a references list, right? They're almost always glowing. And so we're making these really difficult decisions, and sometimes they're the wrong decisions. And this actually goes to a question that's a lot further down the list. Somebody asked along the lines of, it's really hard when you don't advance in a search and then you see they close the search. And the person's phrase was, "I'm worse than nothing." Like, whoa.
I didn't see that question, but wow.
Yeah, that's like hard. I get that from the person who's applying for the job from their perspective. But from our perspective, if we are not sure about a person, they may be okay, but they're not great. If we hire okay and it doesn't work out, it's really hard to reverse that decision. And so the places where I've made the wrong decision have been those places, and thankfully they've been rare, where I get 3 months in to having hired somebody and gone, whoa, I should have listened to the red flags. I should have seen the red flags here, and we didn't see that.
And I think it's a good time to mention, what you mentioned, those references that we get. When you're listing and people actually call the references and speak to them, if people can speak honestly, I'm talking to everybody in the audience, if there's a reference that someone has asked you to be and you don't feel like you can give a glowing example, or they didn't ask you about the reference before they call and you're like, hey, such and such, give an honest reference review. So if they're like, oh, how's their work? Actually, it can be improved, and here's what I thought of. Those are honest things. It's a lesson learned. Like, if you're going to list somebody as a reference, let them know that you're listing them as a reference. Give them the job you're applying for. Make sure they feel comfortable being your reference. But also at the same time, you're not doing a service to that person or to the other organization if you're not being honest about how you actually worked with that person.
Yeah, and if you can't get 3 people to absolutely sing your praises at the top of the mountain, like, don't have those people as references. Because if I get a reference, or if I talk to somebody and they're kind of okay about you, that's not a great sign. So make sure that your references are like super solid.
When I have to go, what's the last name again?
Yeah, exactly. So Candice, what have you done in your personal and professional life to build up resilience? And when you fail, what's your advice for moving on or adapting?
Building up resilience. Well, prioritizing self-care is probably one of the easiest ways to build up resilience, taking time for yourself, building a strong network of people so that when you have been knocked down way too many times, you can rely and lean on those other allies or friends or coworkers. Those are some of the best ways to build up
Resilience.
Resilience, yeah. Yes, that word. Those are some examples. How about you?
I tend to compartmentalize, and I'm not sure exactly when I developed this skill. But the ability to compartmentalize has been really valuable to me. Just to be able to say, it's okay, no matter what is happening right now. Like, other bad things have happened to me in the past. I'm still here, right? This might be like the most difficult thing that I'll ever go through, that I'm going through right now. But I survived everything else. And so being able to sort of get up on the balcony about when you're in that moment of pain or suffering or frustration and go, I survived this in the past. I'm going to survive it again. And that really, I think, makes good. Now, the moving on or adapting piece.
No, I was going to say it's okay to do that sometimes, but sometimes you need to be in the moment and feel the hurt and the pain and let the tears fall or scream into a pillow or punch something. But I do agree that you can't always just...
Yeah, you should absolutely process through it. My wife has a thing that she has said to me a lot. She said a lot when we first started dating. Mm-hmm. She said, feelings aren't facts. Mm. And that's really stuck with me, in that it's okay to feel, it's okay to let these things process through you, but don't let them live in you, right?
Yeah,
Don't let them, don't make it say this feeling is forever, right? Feelings are fleeting, and the emotions we have are fleeting. They're real. I don't want to like discount any of the fear and frustrations and everything that people have, but they're temporary. And that's the whole part about moving on, is saying, okay, I felt it, I'm going to let it go, and we're going to move on to the next thing, because that's really our only option, is to move on.
I have a challenge one for you. You were talking about decision-making committees, and we all know at the university a lot of things take a long time in conversation. And a lot of decision-making bodies have to take time, but also have to limit the collaborators in order to make decisions and move. But a lot of us then waiting to take action, to do implementation, to a really hard time waiting to see that. And often once a decision is finally made, it's go time, no more conversation. Now the subject matters experts, the implementers, have been left out. So knowing that, as we've established, Chris, you've been here since dirt was young.
See, it's not just me.
Do you have examples of positive experience where, as a manager stuck between those, I can help build that trust and that patience to make sure people are ready to take that direction when a decision is made, and to make sure they feel heard once the decision is made?
That's a great question. Thank you. There's a lot to unpack there. I will start by saying dirt is constantly being created, so there's always young dirt.
Okay.
So I think it's really important for us to just, when we're starting any change event or whatever it might be, a new service or a new whatever, that we sit down, and the time to think and the time to really consider the whole thing is at the beginning, and go, okay, who are the stakeholders here? Who needs to be? And that stakeholder list has to be all the way down to the people that are actually going to put it into action, right? That the stakeholder list can't stop with the people that are going to consume whatever we're creating. They're important, like they're of primary importance, but the people that are implementing it are also of primary importance. And I had my first boss here, who listeners of this podcast will probably recognize that I refer to her a lot, and maybe not in the most positive of tones. But she had a firm belief that our technical team, of which I was a member at the time, should never be in meetings with clients, ever, because we were the ones that would stifle creativity because of our because of our tendency to look at like why we can't do things. And I don't believe that. Like, I think you have to limit it. You have to have the right people in the room who aren't going to stifle that creativity. But the people that are going to create the thing that needs to be built need to be in that conversation in some way, shape, or form from the beginning.
Yeah, there's also this idea of, instead of waiting for action, there are ways that teams can contribute even when they're not having a seat at the table. So let's say you're not at the room when it's happening, you still can be providing contributions in terms of what you think could be happening or what you have recommendations for. Maybe you're going to have a side project that actually will tag on to it later. Maybe you can give examples of how it works at other institutions and do some of that legwork. But it's not busy work, but rather they can feel invested in the process, even if they're not sitting at the table. So how can you get the team to be behind the idea, even if they were not surveyed at the beginning? So I think that it really comes down to, when it has to be implemented, they have to feel part of it and feel like it's also beneficial for them in order to feel like they can implement it and make it work. And so if they don't feel involved in the stakeholder parts, how can you as the manager make sure that they still feel involved, so that when it gets to implementation time, they feel valued and they can work on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift a little bit to talking about how we support our staff.
How do we support our staff,
And
Chris?
so what are some of the ways that you recognize the power skills of your staff and encourage it? And I want to to make a small aside here about a definition. What do we mean by power skills? Like, power skills is the new way of referring to soft skills. So it's communication, it's the people skills, it's the interpersonal skills, those kind of things. The non-technical skills in a crowd of IT professionals, the power skills are the non-technical skills. I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about here, because it's a relatively recent change in terminology. I love the change because the skills are anything but soft.
So one of the things that when you're identifying in my team, I might see someone that has the ability to motivate, or I might see someone that has the ability to communicate well. How can I encourage and foster that? By putting them on informal groups or maybe formal groups that allow them to collaborate with others so that their gifts can be seen by other people on our campus. So not that it just looks good for our college, but so that they can be seen in a bigger light. I might encourage them to apply for ITLW or the ITL leadership workshop or any of those type of things that we provide for professional development and training. I might suggest various other avenues where they can learn more so they can enhance that skill. So I see that they have a lot of potential and I'm like, this could go a great way. Have you thought about that? So encouraging conversations like that, usually getting them to get a peer coach or a mentor, someone that I also see has similar skills, but they could benefit from talking to someone that's not their supervisor about, I'm like, okay, we cannot talk every day about this. Not get someone else. There are other people that would be better suited to do to do this conversation with you. How can you do that? So those are some of the things that when I see those in my staff, that's what I would encourage. How about you?
I really love that point of encouraging our staff members to find peer coaches or mentors outside of our organizations, because I think there are some times that we sit there in a loop talking to the same people and we're not making progress. And we're like, why aren't we making progress? Well, it's because we're trying the exact same thing over and over again and it's not working. Maybe you need a different person's perspective here. And to have somebody who doesn't have a horse in the race to talk to about those things is incredibly important.
And time for another plug. The BTAA, they just opened up their mentoring applications for the upcoming spring. So BTAA is the Big Ten Academic Alliance. I'm just saying this for the podcast, not for the people in the room. And they're having their mentorship. So if you want to be with other institutions and have mentorship opportunities, the application's open soon. So please check your email. The WIT, Women in Technology mentoring program, is open.
Yeah, if you don't have a mentor or a peer that you can talk to, you're putting yourself at a severe disadvantage. I will be perfectly direct about that. Get that person in your life or those people in your lives to help you. It's incredibly important. Don't do this alone.
We have another question.
We have another question. Yeah.
First off, you started the conversation today when we all sat down with the notion of the recent maybe feelings of not having control or feeling like things are out of control in your life. It could be things that you don't have control over. That could flow into your work, or it could just be personal. So as leaders, we tend to have discussions a lot about mentoring your team or those types of situations, which makes sense. But can you talk about a time that you've dealt with a situation where you have not been or had the ability to be in control of a situation because the person maybe you have to report to has an idea or a vision that you don't align with yours, and then you have to proceed with those? And how do you handle that when you're not buying it, and you're just having a hard time taking the philosophy and then having your team take on that? And did the question make sense?
I understood. So if you don't really buy into what the leadership has said will go forward, how can you be the champion of that idea, and how can you get your team on board with that idea? Thank you for the question. So one of the things that I will say is, if I can't buy into the idea, sometimes I have to ask a little bit more questions so that at least I can get an understanding of if we're headed in the right vision. Because if we're not even in the same lane, it's going to be really hard for me to even find a nugget of reason to support this idea. We don't have to be agreed. We just have to at least know what is that end goal that we're looking for. Oh, we're looking for this. Okay, I don't agree on how we're going to get there with the idea that you're there, with what you suggested. However, if this is the end result, maybe I can get on board. But if I personally don't feel it, people will know that I don't personally feel it because I don't really hide it on my face. I'll be like, yep, they said we got to do that again. That's not how I want to come to my team with the envision. So is there someone else that I can get to help championing this idea? Because as long as I'm okay with the end result, there might be a person that is better suited to encourage my team to say, this is why we need to do X. They may find that that reasoning coming better from someone that's very vibrant about it. They may actually make me feel more excited about it, but there has to be some type of passion. I'm not saying that there's some mandatory stuff that needs to happen. Mandatory stuff is always going to be there. It's not always going to be fabulous work, but the end result has to still line up with, or it's hard for a manager to make sense of that. I don't know, Chris, help me.
Yeah, I think to me, it is about partnership and speaking truth to power. And by partnership, I mean, if my boss is coming to me and saying, you all have to do this, I've likely not been at the table for that conversation. And I'm not a partner in the enterprise, right? We as IT leaders can sometimes not think of ourselves as leaders outside of IT. We need to think of ourselves as leaders outside of IT in our units. Like, so that when we're talking about, let's say, student success, that we can actually be expert on student success. We don't have to just be expert on the database systems that support student success, right? If we learn the business, we can be partners in the business. So that's part of it. I think that you have to be really good about learning the business. Then the other part is speaking truth to power. If you think it's a bad idea, first, act out of curiosity and try to understand the why. Try to understand what it is, why it is that the college or your unit wants you to do this. Like, maybe you don't understand the why, and that's why you're opposing it. Maybe you don't understand what the purpose of this thing is. But if you still understand it, like, there's a point where you say, I don't agree with this. I may still do it because, this is my job. But to voice your opposition to something, you have to have the bravery and courage to do that if you really feel strongly about it. Once you do, though, decide we're going to do this, you have to get your team on board with it, right? Because the last thing you want to do as a leader is say, they're making us do this. Like, that is the worst thing a leader can actually do. It undermines the entire operation, and you might as well just walk out the door and quit if you feel that strongly that we shouldn't do something like that. So maybe that's a little hyperbole, but yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
You have another question?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to take it back a little bit to peer mentoring and mentorship. As somebody that's worked in higher ed for a little while, but on the academic side, program management side, definitely not really IT until the last year when I stepped into an IT unit. I'm curious on your thoughts on finding a mentor outside of your type of work, and if you've had any experiences, especially within higher ed, of maybe the benefits of finding a mentor that does something completely different to you on campus. Because I know I've found it to be really interesting and helpful for my career progression just in the last year, moving into a unit that happens to be very different. So just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so, and I was doing my doctoral work, very often you kind of have different faculty that you will work with, and that'll be your mentors, and they always encourage, go out and find somebody different outside of your discipline so that you can have that cross-disciplinary research and publish together and all these things, but it's always encouraged. And so one of the best mentors that I've had, they definitely never did anything in IT. Like, these were people in advancement, these were people fundraising, all of the people at the foundation. Like, I've been matched up with several people outside of tech And they've given me some of the best advice that I still hold tight to, because they don't need to know how to operate everything in terms of computer systems to have lived experiences in higher ed and outside of higher ed to give that feedback. I also have mentors and coaches that are not in higher education so that they can give me a lot of feedback for how things operate in their business areas. It is another, when we were talking earlier about groupthink, it's a great way to get out of that bubble. So there is benefit to having someone that knows about the campus and knows about how the politics works at the University of Illinois and having that conversation, but also to have an outside voice is even more rewarding at sometimes when you are hearing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I will admit that I've never really had a formal mentor that wasn't also an IT leader. And maybe that's to my dismay, but I think there's mentorship and then there's relationship, and both are really important. And I think having relationships with people outside of IT is probably even more important than having a mentor or like a formal mentor outside of IT, because it'll help you understand the business, right? And having relationships with the people that like control the money is really valuable, because you get to understand how the place actually works. Because at the end of the day, we do what they pay for. And to understand how the money works and how those kind of relationships can be really powerful as well.
And so another thing that I wanted to mention is being able to mentor the actual students is also not just rewarding for you, but you know how it's that reciprocal relationship. Being able to experience what they're experiencing for the first time, because it's been decades. See, I'm old too, since I did undergrad, and to hear their experiences and what they're going through is so important. So when I've actually had the opportunity and time to still mentor those undergraduate students, I do take that opportunity because I'm learning a lot more about what their experiences are. And so they're obviously, I'm not trying to make them be in IT, but
a quick kind of poll of the audience. How many of you actually have contact with students on a regular basis? Okay.
so about a
For
quarter.
our podcast listeners or viewers who can't see the audience, that was not a lot of people in the audience that raised their hand. Okay. So it's really important that we do kind of get towards that, the goals of our organization by working with students.
Chris, do you know what time it is?
It is time for us to wrap up.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. We have already taken up about 45 minutes. So I don't know that we always have a sign off, but make one up.
Yeah. So, Candice, great conversation. I really enjoyed answering all these questions with you. It was a little bit different than we normally do. Hopefully everyone had a valuable experience here. Thank you for those of you who are here live in the audience. And with that, we'll sign off.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.